Good morning and welcome to Saturday, January 28th, 2023. This is Just Parlays with Chris King here on the Winners and Winers YouTube channel. Hope you all had a good week. Hopefully you're ready for another action-packed Saturday on the hardwood, as there's still roughly 372 college basketball games on the slate today. Not to mention 11 games on the ice. A similar number on the hardwood in the NBA. And, of course, tomorrow is conference championship weekend, as we're down to the final four teams in the NFL playoffs and the Super Bowl 2 weeks off. Nobody cares about the Pro Bowl next week, so we probably won't talk about that either. A lot of stuff going on, though. Hopefully it was a good week for you. Hopefully some of your teams are still playing in something that's relevant at this point in time. Saw a lot of high-scoring games around the NBA last night. Another 141 points for the Bucks. They beat the Pacers by 10. Golden State 129-117 over Toronto. Just a couple of the more entertaining games on the slate last night. Just taking a look at the games today. Feature games probably... Let's see. Boy, there's not a lot of great matchups. I mean, if you look, Denver, Philadelphia is probably the best one. That'll be on ABC this afternoon at 3 Eastern, followed by the Knicks and the Nets at 5:30. And at 8:30 is, of course, the rivalry as old as time, the Lakers and the Celtics at the TD Garden. Lakers still trying to prove that they're relevant in the Western Conference playoff picture. The Celtics still just leading the East rather comfortably despite their recent stumbles against Miami, Orlando, and the aforementioned Knicks. If you're a glutton for punishment, Houston and Detroit are playing. I'm sure there's literally 6 people out there that want to see that game, as they're the two of the worst teams in the league. You look at the standings and see that the Rockets are last in the West, 11-38. The Pistons are worst in the East. They're 13-37, one game behind the Hornets for the worst record in the Eastern Conference. I know Detroit had high hopes, but then Cade Cunningham got hurt, and they never really turned things around. You can expect a lot of points probably in that game. The Pistons give up 120.3 points per game. The Rockets give up 117.1. So a lot of, to quote Lou Brown from Major League, a lot of that Olay defense going on. So not expecting much in the way of low-scoring game there. In hockey, of course, we've got... see who we have on the slate tonight. Okay, we've got the Blues and the Avs at 3, the Bruins and the Panthers at 6. Let's see, the Kings and the Lightning are at 7. Vegas and the Islanders are at 7:30. Buffalo, Minnesota at 9 o'clock. And the rest of the games are not really that entertaining. Montreal, Ottawa, San Jose, Pittsburgh, the Flyers and the Jets, the Blackhawks and the Oilers, the Blue Jackets and the Kraken. And, of course, the pillow fight of the night, the Arizona Coyotes go to the Honda Center to take on the Anaheim Ducks. The Buffalo-Minnesota game is pretty good. Buffalo's won 5 in a row. They're 12-2-1 in their last 15 on the road. I guess, you look at and you see the Blackhawks and you're like, well, why the hell would I back them against Edmonton? Well, funny thing about sports is, people don't necessarily care what your record is. Just ask the Flames the other night. Or ask Colorado the other night. Because both those teams were hefty favorites. And crashed and burned. Chicago was went off at a plus 348 mark number last week, or in their last game, and dominated the Flames 5-1. I actually had them, and I mean, you were still getting plus money getting 1.5 goals, so, but the outright number was very high. That's foreshadowing because you'll see them pop up probably somewhere. Same thing with Anaheim. Like I said the other night, the Ducks were, I don't remember, I know it was a ridiculously high number. The Ducks were plus 338, and they beat the Avalanche in the Ball Arena. But you're going to have a clash there. They play the Coyotes, who will blank the Blues in their last game, 5-0. But you look at the numbers here. Arizona State under the number in 7 of their last 10. Anaheim has gone over in each of their last 10 games. You've seen totals of 9, 8, 8, 8, 7, 7, 8, 9, 7, and 8 goals in the Ducks' last 10 games. That included a 5-2 win at the Mullet Arena earlier this week. So even those two teams could go over the number when they meet. So don't automatically discount the over. They've got the total set at 6.5 for that one at most sports books. Sometimes you wonder if the Arizona can score that many goals in a week. But yeah, it's 6.5 across the board in that contest. So should be interesting. A lot of stuff going on. Like I said, a lot of big college basketball games. It's, of course, a Saturday, so you know that there's a lot going on. Take a look at the slate here. There wasn't much going on yesterday. The biggest game was probably Siena beating Iona 70-53 in a game at Siena. That matchup was between the top two teams in the Metro Atlantic. Iona has now fallen into a tie for third now with that loss. They're 6-3 in the MAC, tied with Quinnipiac, who they will play tomorrow. Ryder is 7-3. Siena leads the conference 8-2. Really good job by the Saints as they held the Gales to 37.7% shooting. Trailed by 3 at the half, really clamped down in the second half. Outscored Iona 37-17 en route to the victory. Speaking of college basketball, of course, our thoughts and prayers go to the family of Billy Packer, who passed away yesterday at the age of 82. Packer, of course, was a mainstay when it came to March Madness coverage on CBS all the way through 2008. You used to have on there with Jim Nance. Packer goes back even further than that because you'd see him on NBC with Al McGuire and everybody. He has a great voice. Him and Bill Raftery and those guys were people that when you heard their voices, you knew that there was a big game going on in college basketball. And he will be missed. Just looking at some of the games we've got to talk about today in college, let's highlight the major games on the schedule. Let's see. Of course, it's the SEC Big 12 Challenge today. So you've got Kansas and Kentucky at the Rupp Arena. You've also got Texas, number 10 in the country, traveling to face number 4 Tennessee in Knoxville. Those will be a couple of barn burner matchups. Just taking a quick scroll through here, it looks like the Texas-Tennessee matchup is the only matchup with 2 ranked teams, which is weird. No. Yep, okay. There's Hofstra's playing Charleston, Arkansas, Baylor, which is weird because both of these conferences have a lot of ranked teams when you get right down to it, because you got Kansas State is 5th in the country. Like I said, Texas is 10, Kansas is 9, Iowa State is 12. Then you've got Alabama as 2, Tennessee as 4. So it's kind of strange that you don't have more big matchups. I mean, Kentucky is big, but Kentucky has been inconsistent all season long, which is a major reason that they are not ranked. John Calipari's team just can't put it together over a consistent basis. Sure, they're 14-6, but they're 5-3 in the conference. We watched them lose to Michigan State. We watched them lose to Gonzaga earlier in the season. They blew out Louisville at home. Then they barely got by an LSU team that's going the wrong direction. They got routed by Alabama. They lost at home to South Carolina in a game where they were favored by 20 points. And they come into this one with 4 straight wins. They beat Tennessee in Tennessee. Then they beat Georgia. They had to rally in the second half for that one. They took down Texas A&M at home, and they're coming off a 16-point win at Vanderbilt, who's still trying to figure out how to play good basketball consistently. They're 10-10 on the year. Not a whole lot to talk about with them as far as that goes. Hey, Will, good to see you. What's up? Not me. I'm still adjusting to waking up at 9 or before 9 in the morning to do this on Saturdays. It's an adjustment from the afternoons that we used to do, but what can you do? Just a reminder for everybody, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell so you'll never miss when the show is on. In case, you don't remember or you forget to set your alarm clock or whatever. It's on at 9 o'clock on Saturdays. That's 8 Central, 7 Mountain, and 6 Pacific. I don't remember what time it is in Hawaii. People are probably still at the bars when we're on. But also, like I said, make sure you like it. Make sure you hit the bell. Tell your friends. Tell your neighbors. Tell your friends' neighbors. Tell your neighbors' friends. Also, I'll put the promo code up. There's a promo code where you can get 60% off any of the premium packages that I have out there, be it daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. If you just want a specific sport, there's that too. It's running across the bottom of the screen. Like I said, right now it's 60% off. It's a pretty good deal when you get right down to it. PLUDRCK 60. We really have to come up with a better system for coming up with promo codes that are easier to remember. I had to go back and type it 3 times this morning. But yeah, 60% off any premiums. That includes if you want more parlays, or if you want, I do single games and such for as well. So they're all available to you. They're all 60% off. So jump in there. Yesterday was a quiet night because there wasn't a ton of stuff going on that I liked. 2-1. I was 2-0 in the NHL with the Devils and the Islanders winning. The Devils were at plus money, so that was nice. And Memphis choked away a game against Minnesota, which I thought they would have won easily on the NBA hardwood. But of course, the name of the game today is college basketball. We all know that's what Saturdays are about between now and probably the end of March, because even as March winds up, you have the tournament, those 2 weekends in mid-March, and of course you have conference tournaments and everything before that. And in February, all you have is regular season games up the wazoo, like today. And speaking of that, we will get into some of that right now when we cover our 3 for the money. And we're going to start with the aforementioned Nets-Knicks game at the Barclays Center. I like the fact that, the line is so low. I know that Durant is still missing for the Nets, but I think they're kind of overvaluing the Knicks here. I know, the Knicks beat Boston the other night in overtime. They beat Cleveland before that by 2, but that's also a team that lost 4 in a row immediately preceding those 2 wins. And 2 of those losses were to the last place Raptors. They also lost to the Wizards and the Hawks in that stretch. They're going on the road here. Granted, it's just across town. Brooklyn has dropped 2 in a row. I get that too, including that disappointing showing against the Pistons the other night. You have to think that this is going to be an angry Brooklyn team at this point after losing to Philadelphia and then Detroit. They played pretty well over the course of the year. After Steve Nash was fired, you're looking. T.J. Warren is doubtful for the Nets with a shin contusion. Ben Simmons questionable with a knee. Day'Ron Sharp questionable with a back. Edmund Sumner is going to play for whatever that means for you if you're taking a stance on this particular game. Let's face it, the Nets still have Irving, who's put up a crap load of statistics in recent games. The Knicks don't have Mitchell Robinson. He'll be out for probably until after the All-Star break with the broken thumb. But you look at this Knicks roster and you're like, okay, they've got Julius Randle, who's probably one of the most inefficient almost 25-point scorers there is in the league. He jacks up 8 threes a game and shoots 34% out there. You've got Brunson, you've got R.J. Barrett, and then, there's a drop-off. Cam Reddish has become useless. He doesn't play. Obi Toppin's been hurt a bunch. Derrick Rose hasn't played a whole lot. Fournier, same thing. Between Fournier, Rose, and Reddish, they've combined to play 66 games out of a possible 150. You wonder what happened to these guys where all of a sudden they're no longer relevant. I get you've got Quickly and you've got Grimes. But come on, you're playing Isaiah Hartenstein 18 minutes a game. You're telling me you couldn't find somebody else to chew up minutes. And in the backcourt, I get you've got Brunson and Barrett. Those guys are playing more than 34 minutes a night. But they don't have a lot of depth behind them. Grimes starts as well. So they're basically starting a 3-card lineup. And they don't have a center now with Robinson hurt. I think Nick Claxton could have a good game for Brooklyn. And I just don't trust the Knicks on the road. Clemson over Florida State, that one's pretty much... I know Florida State beat Pitt last week. Jericho Sims isn't bad, but he's not good either. And he's only playing 14 and a half minutes a game. So, and in those 14 and a half minutes, he's picking up almost 2 fouls. So, you have to look at the fact that he's not a guy that you're going to look at to be an offensive weapon by any stretch. Clemson, Florida State. I know Florida State beat Pitt last week, much to the chagrin of Bronco Devil, who I'm sure a lot of you guys know. They also then were at home and got absolutely steamrolled by Miami of Florida in their last game. They lost 86-63. Clemson, don't look now for some reason. All the success they used to have on the football field, they've suddenly managed to transfer to the basketball court. They're 17-4 overall. They're 9-1 in the ACC, leading the conference. They've won at Pitt. They've won at Virginia Tech. They beat Georgia Tech at home or on the road. Not like anybody cares about that. Their one loss in conference play was on the road in Winston-Salem at the Lawrence Joel Veterans Memorial Coliseum to Wake Forest, a team that they had beaten by 20 in the Little John Coliseum earlier in the year. They come in off back-to-back home wins, so they've swept Virginia Tech now because they beat them last Saturday in Little John. They also routed Georgia Tech on Tuesday night. How the Lions only 1.5 points. Either you're expecting Clemson to sleepwalk through this game, or you think all of a sudden Florida State's going to become a relevant offensive team after watching them hang 63 against Miami Tuesday night in their own building. I I don't see it. And the Vegas over the Islanders. The Islanders won yesterday 2-0. They beat Detroit. Vegas lost to the Rangers. So both teams playing the second game of back-to-back in the same. They played in the same city. I don't think you'll see Sorokin tonight. He played last night. I don't like Varlamov. Vegas is going to be motivated to play a hell of a lot better than they did yesterday. I think Vegas takes that one. In a game that's basically a pick 'em by the books, which is weird because when you look at the standings, you're like, the Oilers aren't that great because they're outside the playoff picture. They're 6th in the Metropolitan. They're 24, 22, and 5 overall with a goals against their goal differential of +3. Vegas is 3rd in the Pacific, 1 point behind the Kings. But they've gone 15, 5, and 3 on the road compared to 14 and 13 at home. And guess what? This is a road game. Vegas is one of those teams that likes to play better when they're not in their own building. You can say that about most of the Pacific because Seattle's the same way. The Kraken 12, 10, and 3 at home, 16, 5, and 2 on the road. And there's a few teams like that around the league. You look at New Jersey is that way. Carolina is that way with a lot more, a lot better road record than a home record. Buffalo's the same way. Buffalo has a losing home record and a winning road record. So I look for Vegas to win there. Will asked about Auburn, Vermont, and Virginia. Bill asked about Louisville plus the points against Notre Dame. Well, let's take those here real quick. Auburn is facing off with West Virginia. I saw the number on this one, and it seemed a bit strange to me, but then I realized, hey, West Virginia is actually not a bad basketball team, even though they're 12-8 and they're just 2-6 in the Big 12. That just shows you how good the Big 12 has been. As you look at West Virginia's losses in the conference, they lost by 6 in overtime to Kansas State. They lost by 7 to Oklahoma State on the road. Kansas beat them by 14. Baylor beat them by 5. Oklahoma beat them by 1. Texas beat them by 8. But they also own a win over TCU, who's ranked 11th in the country. They just beat Texas Tech by 15 in Lubbock. And the one thing you know with West Virginia is two things. So I should say the two things you know about West Virginia. They force turnovers, and they're going to be aggressive on the glass. They're 25th in the country in offensive rebounding percentage. They're 36th in forcing turnovers at 22% of opposing teams' possessions. Auburn, they don't shoot the ball well. They're horrible shooting threes. They turn the ball over 19.3% of the time, which is 233rd in the country. They just had the longest active home winning streak in the country snapped the other day. They had won 28 in a row at home and got bushwhacked by Texas A&M. Auburn's good defensively, but they can't afford to give up points in transition. I think Bruce Pearl's team will hang around. Let me just double check what the latest line was because last time I saw it, it was 4. Now it's 4.5? 3.5? Okay, 3.5 or 4. I think West Virginia's probably going to win the game, but I don't know if they're going to win it by more than 4. Because they don't shoot the ball all that well either. And that's, a big issue. The one thing that Auburn can't do is commit fouls because West Virginia gets to the free throw line, the 10th highest rate in the country. the good part is they foul teams too, because they're 340 in foul and free throw rate allowed at 0.415 free throw attempts per field goal. The question is, can Auburn, who has struggled at the stripe all year, hit enough free throws to stay within the margin? Because neither one of these teams are necessarily great at the line. West Virginia 70.6%, Auburn 69.2%. The potential is there for Auburn if they cut down on turnovers and actually make free throws. I'll take Auburn with the points. If I was going straight up, I would take West Virginia. Vermont. I have to look. I looked at it last night and said, that's not a game I really wanted to mess with. They're playing UMBC at home. Vermont started the year 2-7. Since then, they've gone 9-3 in their last 12. They already beat UMBC on the road by 13 on New Year's Day. They come in with 3 straight wins as John Becker's finally gotten his team to start to play the kind of basketball that you're used to seeing from them, despite not having the same talent that they've had in recent years. UMBC coming in off a road loss to the New Jersey Institute of Technology. They also lost to UMass Lowell on the road, sandwiched around a win against New Hampshire at home. You'll look, and UMBC hasn't been great on the road this year. Lost to Tulane, lost to UNC Greensboro, lost to Georgetown. They beat Lehigh and Columbia and Loyola of Maryland. Then they lost to the real Maryland. Beat Bryant. And like I said, they lost to UMass Lowell and NJIT. UMBC's problem is they don't defend the perimeter well. And Vermont will shoot from out there. Vermont also doesn't turn the ball over, which can make things tough for UMBC because they're 314th in effective field goal percentage defense, and they're 358th in three-point defense. I see what the line is for this because, like I said, I looked at it briefly last night when I was going through the entire slate, trying to pick out games. Let's see. Vermont between 7.5 and 8.5, depending on where you're looking. FanDuel has it at 7.5. DraftKings and Caesars and BetRivers have it at 8. WinBet and BetMGM have it at 8.5. But we're talking about a Vermont team that already beat UMBC by 13 in their own building. They're 5-1 at home. UMBC's 4-6 on the road. And Vermont's playing good basketball right now. I would take Vermont and give the points there. Third game we saw on the list there was Virginia. Yes. Tony Bennett's team. Gotta love a team that, still plays pack line defense and doesn't care if they score any points. Facing none other than Boston College. I did Boston College in a game earlier this week. Who was it that they played? Oh, they played Louisville. That's right. Woo. Which will segue into what Bill was asking about, too, which we'll get to in a minute. Boston College, sure, they've won 2 straight. They beat Notre Dame. They beat Louisville. I got news for you. Neither one of those teams anywhere near what Virginia brings to the table on a night-to-night basis. The Cavaliers, 15-3. They've won 5 in a row. They beat Syracuse. They beat North Carolina. They beat Florida State. They beat Virginia Tech. They beat Wake Forest. The game's in Charlottesville. Virginia, 52nd in effective field goal percentage. They're 8th in turnover percentage, 14.4%. They're shooting the ball well from the outside. Boston College, 246th in offensive efficiency, 293rd in effective field goal percentage, 279th in effective field goal percentage defense, 344th in three-point defense. You're looking at a team that gave up 88 points to Miami, 85 points to Wake, 79 to Syracuse. Granted, Virginia might not score those kind of point totals, but I mean, they did pay 78 on Virginia Tech and they hung 76 on Wake in their last two games. I don't like Boston College. They're a team that, has overachieved at times this season. They're 1-5 on the road. Wake Forest, or I'm sorry, not Wake Forest. Virginia is 9-1 at home. 14 points sounds like a lot until you look at the fact that BC in the last 10 meetings between these teams has broken the 60-point mark twice, and one of those was 60 flat. They had 67 back in February of 2014 and a 10-point loss, but their point total since 55, 49. Oh, I'm sorry, three times because I missed that 65 they had in 2020. 55, 49, 65, 60, 56, 58, 54, 47, 51. And then, like I said, 67 in 2014. We know how good Virginia is on the defensive end of the floor. I don't see BC doing enough to get much out of the mid-50s. West Virginia could put 70 up on these guys and cover the line. I'll take the Cavaliers, especially playing at Charlottesville at the John Paul Jones Arena, because Boston College can't beat anybody on the road. Like I said, Bill asking about Louisville and the points against Notre Dame. Is there a team more disappointing than Notre Dame? They started the season so well. They beat Michigan State. They took down some other decent teams. And you look at them now and you're like, they're 9-12. They've lost 4 in a row. They've lost 7 of 8. They've lost 10 of 12. They lost to Georgia by 15 points. They lost to Florida State in Tallahassee. They lost to Miami at home. They lost to Boston College on the road and at home. They were drubbed by North Carolina. They lost to Syracuse. They lost to Florida State at home. So they've been swept by Florida State. They've been swept by Boston College. They've been swept by Syracuse. They're 1-9 in the ACC. Mike Bray has already said this is the end of the line for him. As far as the coaching department goes, he's done after this season. And the problem for for Notre Dame is the same problem they've had for the last 4, 5, 6 years. They have no rotation. They play 7 guys. That's it. Starling's a freshman. He'll be good if he sticks around. Van Allen Lubin is another freshman. He plays 37% of the minutes. So he plays, 15 minutes a game, give or take. And the other 5 guys they've got are seniors. Hammond, who transferred from Niagara, Goodwin, Leshevsky, Cormac Ryan, and Trey Wirtz, all seniors. And then you got, Matt Zona and Dom Campbell, who barely moved from the bench. They get tired. They don't have the depth. Foul trouble screws them horribly. They don't get to the free throw line. They don't crash the offensive glass. They don't force turnovers. They play at a slow pace because they have to, because they can't afford to run their guys ragged. The plus side, they shoot the ball decent, and they don't turn it over. But, Louisville, for all their horrible issues, and let's face it, they have plenty of them, they catch a break here. Louisville turns the ball over at the third highest rate in Division I, 24.1%. They don't shoot the ball well. If Louisville can clamp down on the perimeter and make Notre Dame take contested shots, and God forbid, if Louisville drives to the basket, they're 71st in free throw rate this year. If they can drive to the basket and get Notre Dame in foul trouble and force them to play those guys that sit on the bench and do nothing, they'll have a good shot here. Am I saying they're going to win the game? No, but do I have any faith in Notre Dame laying 9.5 points? No. Ellis could have a big game here. Notre Dame's just 9-5 at home. They're 5-16 against the number. By comparison, Louisville's only got 2 wins this year. They've got 5 wins against the number. How sad is it that Louisville at 2-18 is 5-14-1 against the number, and Notre Dame is 5-16? I'll take the points. This Notre Dame team, you have to wonder, have they punted on the season now that they know that Bray is going to be gone, and this is going to be a completely new team next year with whoever takes over? And will Starling be at the Golden Dome next year? Or is he going to bounce somewhere else or try to go in the draft? You can't have faith in Notre Dame. That 6-1 start seems like an eternity ago instead of just the end of November. But I would ride Louisville there. I understand, Bill, and I get where Andrew's saying stay away too, but I don't get why Notre Dame insists on trying to go with a 7-man rotation year in and year out. It clearly does not work. Now that we've hit those, we can move on to the 4 for the show. And we're going to go right back to the SEC Big 12 matchup, Texas Tech, LSU, battle of 2 teams that are going the wrong direction. Remember when Texas Tech was good? Remember when Texas Tech, was right in it for the title a couple of years ago? Don't look now, they've lost 8 in a row. The bad part is they've lost 8 in a row. The good part is they've only been blown out in one of those games. They lost by lost it by 6 at TCU. They lost by 3 at home to Kansas. Oklahoma beat them by 5 in overtime. They got boat raced by Iowa State. Texas beat them by 2 in Austin. Baylor beat them by 7 at home. Kansas State beat them by 10 in Manhattan. West Virginia beat them by 15. In case you haven't looked, the Big 12 is a pretty good conference. LSU, meanwhile, Matt McMahon got his welcome to the SEC newsletter a little late. They beat Arkansas in their conference opener. Since then, they lost to Kentucky on the road. They lost to Texas A&M on the road. They lost to Florida at home. Alabama destroyed them 2 weeks ago by 40. Auburn beat them by 18 at home. Last week, I know Skill Will asked about that when we were talking, or maybe it was Danny Daniels last week. Asked about the game with Tennessee last week. And the Volunteers went to Baton Rouge and kicked the crap out of them by 21. And then they played Arkansas and Fayetteville the other day. 40 points. Lost by 20. To an Arkansas team that's been up and down. I got news for you. Texas Tech plays pretty good defense. LSU turns the ball over a lot. Texas Tech will force you to turn the ball over. Texas Tech is a good defensive team. LSU, I don't know what they do good. Right now, not much. They defend the perimeter. That's about it. I have no faith in LSU. I know that you're like, but Texas Tech has lost 8 in a row and they're 10-10. Yeah, but they'll be 11-10 after today. I just, the Big 12, when you look at how well that conference has played, this year, it's understandable because and Texas Tech hasn't been blown out in most of those games. Like I said, Iowa State trucked them. I get that. But you're looking at that conference as a whole. And, I know it's still funny that there's only 10 teams in a team that's called the Big 12. But, of those 10 teams, 6 of them are ranked in the top 17 in the country. Kansas State 5, Kansas 9, Texas 10, TCU 11, Iowa State 12, and Baylor is 17. Everybody in that conference is at least 500. Everybody. And if you watch the WWE, I would go, and The Rock means everybody. Meanwhile, you look at the SEC, and, you got some good teams in there. Alabama's 2, Tennessee's 4, Auburn's 15. Then you got Ole Miss, who's 1-7 in the conference. South Carolina's 1-6. Mississippi State's 1-7. LSU's 1-7. Vanderbilt's 10-10 overall. It's a more top-heavy conference. And outside of Alabama, Tennessee, and Auburn, there are no ranked teams. We talked about Kentucky being inconsistent. Florida is inconsistent. Missouri started really well, and they've kind of come back to earth in conference play. Texas A&M, they're there. They play good basketball. But, it's tough to have faith in an LSU team that just scored 40 points. That's it, 40. I'll take Texas Tech to get back on track. Speaking of teams getting back on track, the Bruins lost the other day to Tampa Bay. They now get a Florida team that just lost to the Kings last night and has had all kinds of problems trying to figure out how to keep the puck out of their own net. Remember last year when the Panthers won the Atlantic Division? Well, now they're 23, 22, and 6, and in 5th in the Atlantic, 28 points behind the Bruins. Don't have any faith in the Panthers, who have lost 3 straight coming into this one. I think you're going to see Boston, who has just been head and shoulders above the rest of the league this season, come up with a road win to avenge their defeat the other night. Phoenix over the Spurs. I know Phoenix is banged up. You won't see Devin Booker. You won't see Cameron Payne. You might see Shamet. But come on, it's the Spurs. In case you haven't watched the Spurs lately, A, consider yourself fortunate. B, consider yourself fortunate because San Antonio lately, last 4 games, gave up 131 to the Clippers, gave 147 to Portland, gave up 113 to the Lakers, gave up 138 to the Clippers again. Their one good game in the last 10, they beat the Nets in a game where Kyrie Irving was a scratch shortly before game time in a move that pissed off most of the betting public because everybody was backing the Nets, and then all of a sudden Irving got ruled out, popped up late on the injury report about 4:30 in the afternoon, and then they scratched him about 6:30 before an 8 o'clock tip. That's the one good game for San Antonio in the last 10. You look at their defensive numbers in the last 10 games, 121 allowed against Boston, 121 against Memphis, 135 against Memphis, 144 against Golden State, 132 against Sacramento. Like I said, 98 against the Nets team that didn't have Durant or Irving, 131 against the Clippers, 147 against Portland, 113 against the Lakers, 138 against the Clippers. Phoenix had won 4 straight before falling to Dallas the other night. They should be able to take care of business against a Suns team. And that line has actually moved down now. It's 5.5 at a lot of books. They, trying to entice people to jump in there a little bit more. Andrew said he got plus 160 on the Bruins, minus 1.5. Yeah, Florida's just, God, they are just terrible when it comes to keeping the puck out of their own net. They have a goal differential of -6. They've given up 180 goals in 51 games. Meanwhile, in case you're wondering, Boston in 48 games, they've scored 183. They've given up 101. By far and away the best number in the league. The Bruins first in the league in goals against at 204. Florida, how you say, not so good. 24th at 351. Not the kind of numbers you want to have when a team like the Bruins are coming to town. Florida just an 898 save percentage as a team. Boston 931. Now, could Spencer Knight or Sergei Bobrovsky or Alex Leon or John Van Beesbrook out of retirement put up a nice night for Florida? Sure. Am I counting on it? No. You look at the Panthers, like I said, they gave up 4 to the Kings last night. They lost 7-6 in overtime to the Penguins their previous game. They got beat 6-2 by the Rangers before that. They just can't keep the puck out of their own net. And that's why they're a stumbling along team that's outside the playoff picture right now as we reach the end of February and come up on the All-Star break. And Utah State over Fresno State. I know Fresno State has upset the apple cart a few times this season. They took down UC Irvine earlier this year. They took down New Mexico when the Lobos were still undefeated. They beat UNLV last week. This is still a team that's 7-12 and who does nothing well offensively. Utah State, they're coming off on a road loss to San Diego State. But, San Diego State, everybody knows Brian Dutcher's team is very good, especially on the defensive end of the floor. And in Utah State's losses, they lost by 3 to Weber State, lost by 3 to SMU. They got trucked by Boise State in Boise. They got beat by Nevada in Reno. And they lost to San Diego State in San Diego. I think they've got enough offense. They're 6th in the country in effective field goal percentage. They lead the nation in three-point shooting. They've got enough offense to get past a Fresno State team that doesn't shoot anything well and who struggles defending the three. I like Utah State there. As you see, money lines bet a little better 5-1 if you bet the puck line with the Bruins, along with the point spreads on the 3 hoops games, better than 17.5-1 on your hundo. And that takes us to everybody's favorite, the shot in the dark. As Jim Williams used to say, the Chinese menu, you don't have to take all 10. You can take some from column A. You can take some from column B. Mix them all together. Mix them in with some of the ones from the other ones. Mix them in with some of the games you picked yourself. And put something together that works. So that's all about. Clippers over the Hawks. If you wanted to, you could say, well, screw that. I'm just going to take the over because the Hawks have been over machines of late. And the Clippers just hung 138 on the Spurs. The line opened with the Hawks by 1. Now it's the Clippers by 1. Who knows by game time? Now it's back to the Hawks by 1, depending on where you look, or 1.5, or a half, or a pick 'em. But you look at the Hawks 28-21 to the over. They've gone over in 5 of their last 6. Clippers went over in their last 2 and 3 of their last 4 overall. Hawks coming off a 137-132 win on the road over Oklahoma City. But let's not forget that they also lost to Charlotte last week and then lost to the Bulls. Meanwhile, the Clippers have won 4 straight. Sure, 2 of those were against the Spurs. and one was against the Lakers. But they also beat Dallas in that stretch when Doncic was healthy. Of course, Doncic won't play tonight against the Jazz. That's why I didn't put that game up. Because Utah should win, but we saw them struggle against the Mavs last year early in the playoffs when Doncic was missing. So do with that what you will. The Bulls minus 2.5 over Orlando. Orlando's actually played decent basketball, which is scary because you're like, well, who the hell likes Orlando? The Magic, the difference is the Magic, they played last night, fell to Miami. They did cover the line, but, this is their third game in 4 nights because they played Indiana on Wednesday, had Thursday off, played at Miami Friday, now they're home for this one. The Bulls had Friday off after losing to Charlotte in a disappointing performance. I'll give the 2.5 and take the team that has the rest advantage in their pocket over a team like Orlando that has a lot of youth but hasn't necessarily translated to wins. A couple of big, well, not big, but hefty underdogs here. Montreal over Ottawa. Ottawa played last night. They beat Toronto 6-2. They might be a little flat. Montreal seems to get up for games against Canadian teams, which I guess is good because they have to get up for games against somebody because, let's face it, they're not a good hockey team. The Canadians, of course, Cole Caulfield is out for the year, decided to have shoulder surgery. Supposed to be Samuel Montembeault going for the Canadians, 10-9-2 with 314 goals against 910 save percentage. Against Anton Forsberg, 9-10-2, 324, 903 save percentage there. And I know the injury reports aren't pretty and everything else. I just think that Montreal tends to surprise you. This line has actually gone up to plus 185 at some books. So there's even more value out there than there was when I did this last night. The Canadians 9-12-3 on the road. Sends a pedestrian 13-11-1 at home. Just looking here. Ottawa's, like I said, they're probably hungover from winning last night. Toronto didn't have Austin Matthews. They looked kind of flat, and Ottawa took advantage of that. I think that Montreal can steal one. I like the over in Creighton and Xavier. Let me take a look at the number real quick. Xavier, 157.5. Whoa, well, both teams are put up some points in their last games, Xavier hung 82 on UConn on the road. They had 95 against Georgetown before that. Creighton coming off a 104-76 win over St. John's. Looking at recent matchups, first meeting this season was 90-87 in favor of Xavier about 2.5 weeks ago. Let me just check one more number here before I stick my foot in my mouth. You have to go a long way to find when Xavier didn't score at least 72 points. That goes all the way back to November 25th when they lost to Duke. Creighton, they only scored 60 against UConn 3 weeks ago, but that was UConn. Both teams shoot very well. Creighton 27th in effective field goal percentage, 27th in turnover percentage, 21st in 2-point shooting, 22nd in offensive efficiency. Of course, Shireman's a great 3-point shooter. Trey Alexander's been good in that role too. And you've got Kalkbrenner in the middle who is going to be a force to be reckoned with. On Xavier's side, of course, 7th in effective field goal percentage, 4th in 3-point shooting, 5th in effective field or adjusted offensive efficiency, 38th in 2-point shooting, and they play team basketball. They're second in assist percentage this year. Zach Freemantle's had a good year. Soli Boom, who seems like he's playing for his 7th team in college basketball. Jack Nunn is the former Purdue guy. You got Kunkel in there. I think this one will end up past the number. Both these teams like to score. Xavier's 16th in tempo. Creighton's 117th or 118th in tempo. Like I said, we saw 187 points in the first meeting at Xavier. We might not get to 177, but I think we'll end up in the 160s. Yeah, exactly. It's high for a reason. I think you'll end up somewhere 165, 170. I mean, unless all of a sudden we see a brick fest in the second half, I'd go with the over. Sabres in the Wild, we talked about Buffalo a little bit earlier. 12-2-1 in their last 15 on the road. They've won 5 straight. They've pushed into a little bit of contention for a playoff spot. You know, they're still behind Tampa Bay by 8 points for the final spot in the Atlantic. But now they're chasing up the wild card race. They're 2 points behind Pittsburgh, 3 behind Washington. 15-7-1 on the road. If they can get some competent goaltending, watch out, because they score a lot with Alex Tuck and Peyton Krebs and Skinner and Tage Thompson, and they've got a good defenseman back there in Rasmus Dahlin. Minnesota, they're up and down. It's tough to know what you're going to get for them from one day to the next. And they slipped past the Flyers the other day, snapped a 3-game losing streak where they lost to Carolina and Florida and Tampa Bay by multiple goals, all on the road. They're at home here, so they've got that going for them. But I'll still take Buffalo the way they're playing right now. Makes them a tough team. Sacramento over Minnesota. Minnesota beat Memphis last night. The Kings still leading the Pacific Division. And they're a dangerous team, the Sacramento Kings. They like to score. They're basically what Bill was saying about Creighton and Xavier. The numbers are high for a reason. Sacramento, I believe, still leads the league in scoring offense. I'm going to double-check my numbers real quick. Minnesota playing the same game of back-to-back. You don't know if you're going to have Gobert. You know you're not going to have Towns. And Sacramento wanting to put that bad showing against the Raptors in the rearview mirror. Kings average 119.7 points a game, first in the league. They're first in offensive rating. They should take care of business on the road against a Minnesota team that's tired and not necessarily that good. Winnipeg over Philadelphia. I can't back Philadelphia. They're just, I backed them a few days ago. They sucked. They've lost 3 straight. They're 8 points out of a playoff spot. They're 1 game below 500. Winnipeg got beat by Buffalo the other night. The Jets are second in the Central. They're 3 points behind Dallas. They're playing at home. They're 17-7 at home this season. Connor Hellebuyck should have a good game there, and I like the Jets. Cornell over Brown. Cornell's gotten a lot of love from us. They're a high-scoring team. They are very capable of hanging with anybody, much to the chagrin of teams in the Ivy League. Harvard beat them last week, 95-89 in a high-scoring game. Before that, they beat Columbia 102-85. They hung 94 on Yale. They hung 88 on Penn. They gave Miami all they wanted back in December in Miami, losing 107-105 in a high-scoring game. They're third in effective field goal percentage, 57.2%. They're 4th in 2-point shooting. They're 33rd in 3-point shooting. They're 24th in tempo. Brian Earl has done a great job with Cornell. Mike Martin's done a decent job with Brown. They're 10-9. They coming off a win over Columbia last Saturday. But Brown is second worst in the nation in free throw shooting. And that does not bode well when you need as many points as you can get when it comes to facing a Cornell team that can score. I'll take the Big Red. Kansas +3 over Kentucky. The only reason Kansas is an underdog in this game is because the game is in Rupp Arena. Doesn't mean that they should be favored. I like the Jayhawks there. Utah over Oregon. Is there a more inconsistent team than Oregon? The whole Pac-12 has sucked, but, they lost to Stanford, then they beat Colorado. They lost to Arizona State, then they beat Arizona. They blew out Cal, not that that's saying anything. I think Utah should be able to, at worst, cover the line if they don't win outright. They've won 3 straight, beating Washington State, Washington, and Oregon State. Oregon won the first meeting by 10. That was 3 weeks ago. Don't have faith in Oregon at home in this one. And finally, the Detroit Pistons over the Rockets in that game that we talked about with the 2 worst teams in the league. The Pistons are at home. The Rockets are not very good. Granted, the Pistons aren't good, but at least they try. I'll take the Pistons at home to beat Houston. As you see on the money line, 65,111.91 on 100. If you were to bet the point spreads and the puck lines, everything else, 411, 234, 44. So beat some money. But again, thanks for being here. Hope you guys have a good weekend. Of course, don't forget the NFL playoffs tomorrow. If you didn't watch Once Upon a Time in Las Vegas, The Rise and Fall of the Greatest Sports Betting Show with myself and Rachel and Steen and Rocky, that's up on the YouTube channel as well. Again, the promo code running across the bottom of the screen, good for 60% off any of the premiums that I've got out there. So take advantage of the sale while it's there, because everybody knows the number changes from week to week. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that good stuff. Have a great weekend. Have a safe weekend. And we will see you back here next Saturday at 9 a.m. to talk more about what's going on in the world of sports. And, of course, Just Parlays. I'm Chris King, everybody. So long.